We are excited, very excited, to have a panel of experts joining us this morning to talk about post-secondary planning as it relates to financial success. We will have them introduce themselves, a little bit about their background and what they do. So we'll start with Julie.
Hello, my name is Julie Forman. I work at Lake Area Technical College. I've been employed here for about 22 years. About 8 years of that has been in the financial aid department. I live in Watertown, so that's about all I have to say about that.
All right. Well, thank you, Julie. Next, let's go with Travis.
Yes, Travis Schuring. I am a financial advisor with Edward Jones here in downtown Sioux Falls. I work with clients on the education planning, 529 plans, also have a lot of experience with the GI Bill, being a Guard veteran myself.
You could ask everyone to mute their mics as well, just to make sure. Okay, and then thanks, Travis. And then Bonnie, let's go with you.
Hi, I'm Bonnie Spain. I'm the Executive Director for Consumer Credit Counseling. I've been here over 30 years. I'm a HUD certified housing counselor and an NFCC certified counselor. And we also produce financial education programs out of our agency that are used nationally across the nation. So thank you.
Yeah, and thank you guys for all being here with us today. So before we begin, I just wanted to do a quick overview of how today will kind of go. We'll go in the same order. We just had them introduce themselves, and we're going to ask each person a question and then rotate through. That way, just in case any topics have a lot of questions or discussions, we don't end up leaving anyone out, hopefully. And then hopefully there will also be time at the end once we are done to ask additional questions as well. So with that, we'll just kind of start. So yeah, Julie, we'll start with you. So how do I apply for financial aid, and which application forms are required to apply for financial aid?
So the application for federal aid is called the Fafsa, and you would first go to the studentaid.gov website and apply for what's called an FSA ID, basically a username and password that you'll use to apply for the federal aid. It's all done online, and you would need, social security number, birth date, tax information. We use what is called prior year taxes. So for 22-23 here, we're using 2020 taxes. It's just helpful so that everybody, or more people, I shouldn't say everybody, some still don't have 2020 taxes done, but more people would have their tax information completed.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Julie. And then just real quick as well as a kind of follow up to that, what if I'm missing a document, like a tax return document or anything like that? Is there anything additional that we can do, or?
Well, the tax return, so when you're in the FAFSA applying, it will give you the option to use what's called the IRS data retrieval tool. And that will actually pull your information straight over from the IRS. It's very handy, and it's probably the best way to do it. Some people it doesn't work for, of course. And in that case, if you don't have a copy of your tax return, you're going to have to contact the IRS, and you can do that online, by phone, by fax. You request what's called a tax return transcript, and that will give us all the information we need.
Okay, awesome, thank you.
Ellen, we do have a question in there.
Yeah,
we have a question in the chat that says, do the colleges still require FAFSA if they are planning on bankrolling the cost?
We do not require students to fill out the FAFSA, and I really have never heard of a college that requires the FAFSA.
This is Bonnie Spain. Could I add a comment? I do know that when you're looking for scholarships, sometimes you have to have fill out the FAFSA. So it's a good idea because there's so many scholarships available.
Yes, we always encourage everybody to do it just because you just never know. Especially like a farmer or something, if they had a down year, you know, you could be eligible for some grants.
All right. Good question. And then I see that Charles just had made a comment as well that he was under the impression we do require the FAFSA. So I would assume, Charles, on that, like they kind of had specified that, I mean, I guess it could differ from different school to different school, but that might also just be more related to like a scholarship type of thing as well. And as we can also see, Laura also gave us a nice little tidbit in the chat of TA requires it no matter what. So for those Department of Labor employees, that's a good thing to know. All right, and it looks like we're good there. So next we'll go with Travis. How can financial planning help with post-secondary planning?
Well, I think the financial planning piece can actually start very early. I have a lot of clients that'll start 529 plans, which is the preferred education savings plan. In every state has their own plans. There's multiple partners out there that you can have plans through. The benefit to the 529 planning is the tax-free growth, as long as it's used for a qualified education expense. That's a very broad category. It has grown over the years. So basically what I tell clients is room, board, books, if you're getting art supplies, computers, can't buy the new car for the kids to go to college. But it's a very broad category that we can help on that front. We work with schools to pay the schools directly, or we can pay the clients and they can take care of the payments with the schools. It's a great program. It allows them some flexibility as well. Another question I get on the financial planning piece is, well, I've got 2 kids. What if one of them doesn't go to college? Fortunately, the law allows you now as the owner and the kids as the beneficiary to change the beneficiaries, so you can adjust which kid, grandkid, nephew, niece is actually the beneficiary of those funds. So you have a lot of flexibility as it stands today. But I always tell clients as well, laws change, and it's important to whoever is helping you with that financial planning piece to be engaged with them and to ask questions along the way to make sure that when it comes time to use those funds, that they are certainly available for you to use at that point in time.
That's great information. All right. Any questions or any comments about that? All right. If not, we'll move on then. So for Bonnie, what is involved in credit counseling and how can it help with your debt?
There are 2 credit counseling agencies in South Dakota. One is Consumer Credit Counseling of the Black Hills here in Rapid City. The other one is Lutheran Social Services in Sioux Falls. We're both nonprofit. We're both accredited organizations. We provide financial and housing counseling at no charge. So we're going to do an analysis of a person's financial situation and look at their goals and where their debts are at and develop an action plan to help them address any concerns they have. And that's offered at no charge. And then we also have financial education programs that we provide at no charge. Locally, it would be credit when credit is due. And then it's also Make Your Move, a guide to home ownership and the ins and outs of renting. And those are, again, at no charge. We also have a debt management program, and that's for on both sides of the state. That's for individuals that are struggling a little more with their debt and having trouble making their monthly payments. And so we develop a plan where they can pay all their creditors all at once, and we negotiate with the creditor to reduce interest and late fees. And as people pay down their debts, their credit score increases. We also offer a lot of resources. We answer a lot of different questions. I've had people call me what to do when I can't pay my bill, or what to do when my creditor all of a sudden is reporting me late when I'm not late. So we're a resource in that respect too.
That's great information. I know you guys do help a lot of people. We have utilized you guys a lot over the years. Oh, all right. And then we'll go back with Julie now. If I don't apply for financial aid this year, will that affect my eligibility for financial aid in subsequent years?
No, that doesn't matter at all.
Okay. Good to know, because I know that's definitely a question we've heard in the field from people who are looking to go to college as well, or have done it or are already in the middle of it. And so that's what we've always been shared. So good to know that. All right, so Travis, what are some tips for budgeting while receiving financial aid?
I think the budgeting piece is something that a lot of folks miss, and they find out that they're eligible for X amount of aid, but understanding how much you actually need is huge. It's one of the things that will help them walk out when they're finished with school. Obviously, there's a debt load, but it's about making sure that that debt load is still manageable for them as well. All too often, without a budget, you see money that's available, it gets spent. So I encourage folks that are going through post-secondary school to really kind of establish what's the needs, and make sure that those are covered. But then at the same time, make sure that they're not just taking money because it's available and spending it, because eventually we are going to have to pay that back. And it does create a burden down the road. It does affect your ability to do other financial planning once you are out into the quote unquote professional world. So that budgeting piece is something that I really stress. I give all of my clients I give them a budget sheet, have them work through it, and then we talk through what that looks like so that they can make the best decision, the most educated decisions for themselves in the financial assistance and planning side of the house.
Definitely, and especially I believe it also just helps just to have another person's eyes on it, because there's so many things that you may gloss over or just miss that you didn't think about as an expense or those type of things. So it's really great stuff. All right. Good to hear, Jason. Well, looks like we may have a question here. So this might be for you, Julie, but is FAFSA applied for in fall for the year to come, or if FAFSA has been done December 2021, will it be redone fall 2022 for next year?
So the FAFSA becomes available to apply for October 1. So in October of 2021, the 22-23 FAFSA became available. It just gives people a lot more time to get that completed, and if they do need to get any of those documents, gives them more time. This has just been changed, within like the last 5 years, so it's helpful. October 1, you can start applying, and then usually schools will have what's called a priority date. Lake areas is April 1st, but you can apply for it all the way through the actual academic year too.
Good to know. Because yeah, I did not know that was for the next year, so that is good. All right, and then any more questions? No. All right, so we'll go with Bonnie. Are there fees involved at all for anything you guys do at credit counseling?
So counseling, budgeting, housing, that's all free of charge. So if you get behind in your house payment or behind in your rent and need help, it's free of charge. If you want to take a financial education program, it's free of charge. Now, the debt management program, that's on a sliding scale, and that's explained because that's individual based on a person's debts and their budget. The one clarification I'd like to make is nonprofit credit counseling is way different than what you'll see on the internet, which is called debt relief or debt settlement. And the reason I want to tell you this is we recently had a woman come in, and she had repaid this company $15,700. And of that, $8,100 was charged in fees. So I always worry about people that go to the internet. It's not a good option. You want to talk to someone local who can help you and who will be here and show you where your money is going and how to help you. So,
yeah, definitely great stuff there, and I totally agree. And if we can utilize the services, all for it, because I think that's just an incredible service that you guys are able to offer everybody. All right, doesn't appear to be any questions for that. So we'll go back with Julie here. Where can I find information about other sources of financial aid, such as scholarships?
Well, for us on our website, on the Lake Area Technical College website, we have a whole page of financial aid information, and scholarships is on there. A quick Google search will give you a lot of information. But you always want to make sure that you're never paying for anything, or there's even websites for like Fafsa that you would have to pay to complete it, but all that stuff should just be free.
Gotcha. And yeah, it's nice how good of a tool Google is sometimes. I know in the past I've also used Google just to look up sites that may have entire listings of scholarships that are kind of nationwide even, because it can be even as simple as there's scholarships out there for people who are left-handed. So it's nice to have that giant broad reach and kind of see what's all out there, even from a national level that might be around. And just as another kind of aside here real quick, when we do send out the email with the link to the recording, we'll also have a lot of the stuff that we discussed either in there, links to stuff, resources and things like that, and all the kind of information we've touched on today, just in case if you're wondering if there's gonna be notes or anything.
And if you know what school you want to go to, always contact your financial aid office because they're there to help you.
Yeah, that's a good tip as well.
Ellen, we do have a question for Travis in the chat.
Oh, yeah.
Says, if you have a 529 investment for your child or children, let's say Edward Jones, does Edward Jones send payment out of the account to the school's cost, or do you withdraw that as needed?
Here with Edward Jones, we do send it to both. Each firm is a little bit different as to what they can and will do. So obviously I would chat with whoever you have those investments with. For us, what we do is we work with the schools directly. Schools here in South Dakota are great to work with. We get the address to where to send it. We have the students, student ID. Some schools still use Social Security, some of the smaller ones. We send that to the school directly once they tell us what their quote unquote bill for the semester is. They also have the ability to pay it themselves. They can pay it, contact us, let us know how much they paid the school, or let's say they bought a computer. They can tell us how much they spent for that. I just always encourage families to maintain those records and invoices from schools, receipts for computers, things like that that aren't directly through the school. In the event that the IRS ever comes back and audits, that's where it'll be important to them to be able to show the IRS that it was for a qualified school expense, education expense. If we pay the school directly, it's never a problem because it's a direct payment to the school.
All right. It also looks like Jason had a follow-up to that. Do the kids get access for the money at a certain age then, or is it always the parents' funds? So let's say master's or PhD after the 4-year, et cetera, any of those type of things.
Generally, the parents or even grandparents, aunt, uncles, they're the owner of the funds and they designate who the beneficiaries are. There's no age limits. If a person is going to go back for their master's, it can be 529s can be used for that. I have couples that mom's going back to school, mom's using education funds, the kids are in college, they're using education funds. So it's extremely versatile as to how they're used. It's just, I always encourage folks just to make sure that they are truly being used for a qualified education expense.
So, and that's probably the biggest thing is that it would just be making sure it's for that. You couldn't just give it to them to put for like a down payment to a house or something like that for that specific thing.
Yep. If you do pull those funds for something other than that, there are penalties that can be assessed by the government on that standpoint as well.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Kind of seems like an HSA in a lot of that sense as far as like the qualifying medical purchases, kind of the same situation just for education. All right, good to know. I don't appear to see anything else there. All right, so we'll go back to Travis here. What are some steps that you should take once you complete any of your sort of training, whether it's 1 year, 2 year, 4 years?
Well, the first thing I like to do is just encourage folks to take a step back and take a deep breath and recognize that that they've got an achievement. And now, of course, then the professional life, quote unquote, starts at that point. And with that comes some responsibilities. One, obviously, if you borrowed money, understanding what that repayment looks like and what your options are on that front. It's the world's wide open depending on what your career field is and what school you went to and how much money you've taken out, things along that line. So it's becoming educated on what that repayment process looks like. The other thing that I encourage folks is to understand the benefits that are now afforded to them as they now move to an employer in a professional status, understanding, healthcare, understanding, their other insurance, opportunities, long-term care, disability, understanding what those mean, understanding what their potential 401k, simple SEP IRAs that's offered as an employer retirement plan, pensions, taking the time right away to understand what those are, so that as they continue, those things that are their benefits, like a 401k, that those funds are working hard for them. Do they have a match? Are we maxing that out? Do you have the opportunity to have a Roth 401k within your 401k? So I encourage folks to use the resources in their communities. Obviously, there's financial advisors throughout the state. Misconception is many of them do not charge you to sit down and go through those kinds of things. So reach out, find some folks that are that's what they do for a living. Find folks that you trust. I believe that you need to have a relationship with them built upon trust. And there's a lot of really good resources and a lot of really good folks out there that can help them get off on the right foot. So educating, taking the time, recognizing it's a whirlwind as you move into your first professional career opportunity, but at the same time, taking the time to make sure that you set a plan in place for the next 40 years potentially.
Yeah, that's really good advice. Speaking from my own personal experience, I don't think I understood an HSA till I was 28. So I can definitely see the benefit of knowing that immediately once you start getting into the professional fields and not trying to find out later on. So I definitely agree with that. And having worked in insurance before, I definitely understand that financial planning and that as well. And just in case, I guess if anybody has insurance agents, they're also pretty good at the financial planning as well, since they help a lot with that. And a lot of them are certified. So if you already have a relationship built up with an insurance agent you may have had for a long time, or your family's been with for a long time, I also think that's another good option if you feel comfortable with them on that side of things. All right. Doesn't look like there's any questions there. And all right, so with Bonnie, can you briefly explain what goes into a credit score, even though I know that's a loaded question. And then also, once you're done with that, could you also touch on your video series that Consumer Credit Counseling is going to be doing this fall?
So your credit score is nothing more than a numerical compilation of what's on your credit report. So when you borrow money, your lenders report to the 3 national credit reporting agencies how much you borrow, how you're paying it, and what the credit limit is, and all of that information. Okay, so then Fair Isaac and Company, called the FICO score, then takes this and puts it in a numerical number. And that's what your credit score is. And your numerical number is based 35% on how you're repaying. In other words, are you paying as agreed every month on time? That's 35% of your score. 30% of your score is your credit utilization. And what I mean by that is if I have 2 $5,000 credit cards and I have them maxed out, I'm using all 5,000, then my credit utilization is going to be not as high of a score as if I use only half to a third of that $5,000. That's the credit utilization. 15% of it is based on how long I've had credit, which then again, the older you are, the easier it is to improve your credit. 10% is on your credit mix. And then there's the 10% of new credit. And this is probably the area that people really don't understand. And that's if I go out and borrow money or apply for credit, it can be a negative on my credit report and in my credit score. And the reason being is it takes lenders 30 to 60 days to report that information. So in the meantime, they don't know, did you get all of this credit when you went to borrow or not, or were you turned down? And so that's a 10% of your credit score. So the best way to improve your credit score, obviously, is to repay your debts, because again, 35% is based on how you're repaying it. And that's what we'll help people with is, depending upon what your goal is depending on how you want to handle your credit score. If you're wanting to buy a house is different than if you want to get paid out, get out of debt. So that's why financial advice and credit advice needs to be individual based on your personal situation. What Alan referred to is we have a new series coming out this fall called Paying for College SD. We worked with Black Hills Special Services on a grant from the South Dakota Community Foundation. And there are 5 videos, and they'll be free for everyone across the state, and they'll be at the website www.payingforcollegesd.org. The first video is research and planning. The second video is paying for college. The third video is budgeting while you live on campus. The fourth video is budgeting while you live off campus. And the fifth video is tips for parents. And one thing that I learned is Julie and all of her colleagues do a great job in helping students across the state. It doesn't matter where you're going to school, they're a great resource, and you can ask them a ton of questions. And they should be released about August, September.
Yeah, and just so everyone knows, once those are out, Bonnie will be letting us know, and then we will also send out those resources so you can start utilizing those with any students, or and I especially kind of like that last one too, is also including the parents in that and giving them some sort of prep work as well. So yeah, I really enjoyed that. That's exciting stuff, Bonnie. We appreciate you doing that. I know you put a lot of hard work into getting that put together. All right, and then let's see. So yeah, that's pretty much the end of our questions. So we can open up for any questions people may have.
Ellen, we have a couple more in the chat.
Okay.
This one looks like it would be directed towards Travis again. Does money in the 529 make interest? If so, is it better to leave the money in the account until after they graduate, maximize the growth, instead of paying each year of school?
Yes, it does. A 529 can be invested just the same as a regular brokerage account, an IRA. In fact, most of the 529 partners that we use per se have an equivalent fund that's a designated 529 fund that would be very similar to the fund that is actually in a Roth IRA per se. Now, with that, there are obviously costs to purchase those funds. You can leave it in cash if you wanted. I wouldn't advise that at this point unless we're actually in the point where we're maybe drawing on funds. But if we have a 5, 10, 15, 20 year time frame, before somebody's going to be using those funds, obviously we would want to have that invested to let that grow over a period of time to maximize the growth. As far as holding the funds and waiting until they're after school, we have to take the funds out in the year that the expense occurs. So if it's for this fall of 2022, going to one of our trade schools or one of our regent schools per se, we would want to make sure that we actually make that distribution here before the end of the calendar year, because you will have made that payment to the school during the fall of 2022 from that standpoint.
Perfect. Thank you, Travis. Looks like that was a good answer for him. Julie, this one seems like it's for you. It's a little bit of a longer one, but can a screenshot from a customer with the date confirmation number and release number be confirmation that the FAFSA was submitted for the fall 2022 semester at Lake Area Tech? If the FAFSA previously submitted for the spring 2022 semester at Lake Area Tech has the same confirmation number and DRN number, would a employment specialist need a new submitted FAFSA confirmation? Will the confirmation number and DRN number always be the same number information for each semester? There's a lot there, so I can repeat anything you need.
Okay, so the screenshot wouldn't necessarily be confirmation, but we can take that information and we can log in at the Department of Ed website and kind of go around the back door and kind of look and see if we see anything that was submitted for Lake Area Tech. And I think that if you had the same confirmation number and DRN number, that you would need to complete a new FAFSA, because I think that would be the same FAFSA that was completed.
Okay. So yeah,
it's going to have the same confirmation and DRN number.
Okay, so that's what you're kind of saying is like if they do, that's probably the exact same FAFSA application, and so needing to redo that. Got it.
Yeah.
All right.
And that's one of the issues when the FAFSA does become available in October of the year before, that a lot of people end up completing the wrong FAFSA. So.
Yeah, so the October 1st date's a real big one that we all need to pay attention to, especially when it comes to that stuff and discussing that with clients or anybody like that. All right, well, are there any other questions anybody has? I'm not seeing anything.
And Julie, Travis, and Bonnie, if there's anything that you guys thought of during this conversation that would be important to add, please let us know, because this is all very good information that's going to help a lot of people.
Definitely. And yeah, this is something that we'll see what kind of goes in the future with this, but we think this is a really good idea, and it's a really good thing to be able to put in front of people and get this information out there, because obviously it is quite a confusing mess to try to figure out on your own. So yeah, definitely use the resources available to you guys. But yeah, I just want to thank all of our experts here this morning for joining us and sharing this information with us. And like I said, when we send out the link to the video, we'll include a lot of the things that were said today, as well as links and other resources to contact anything like that. But besides that, yeah, thanks everybody, and get you out of here a little earlier than we originally planned. So give you some of your day back, and hope you guys have a great day.